U.S. adding 64,000 jobs in November as the delayed government data tops forecasts, but unemployment did hit this fresh four-year high. Joining us this morning with some reaction first from the White House is the National Economic Council Director, Kevin Hassett. Kevin, good morning. Good to have you.
It's great to be here.
A lot of information that the street's trying to absorb. How do you characterize both October and November?
Yeah, I think it's best to sort of combine the two. And if you do that, then you're looking at private sector gains of about 120,000, maybe 121. And then we dropped about 160,000 government workers, federal government workers, who are the people who took the buyout that, we began that program in the spring and gave people to the fall to step aside. And so I think that from the private sector point of view, it's just about what we've been getting all year. It's solid upward trajectory. The president's private sector job creation since he took office about 700,000 jobs. And so I think that, like the vast majority of the Bloomberg people polled were surprised on the upside. And I think that we were surprised kind of not at all. We think it's about on trend is what's happening.
All right, so Kevin, Jim Cramer, I understand exactly what you said, but I want to be like the president. 64,000 people got a country of 347 million people. He calls you up for dinner. You come over for dinner, and he says, hey, listen, that's unacceptable. I need rates down to 1%. I need them now because we got to put more people to work. What do you say to him?
Well, my conversations with the president are private. I spent about an hour and a half in the Oval with him yesterday going over a whole number of topics, including today's jobs numbers. The bottom line is that the president thinks that interest rates could be lower, and I think there's a lot of people that share that point of view. And the reason they can be lower is not just, mumbo jumbo. It's because instead of getting growth out of a big demand push, printing money, having Congress mail checks to people, we've got a supply push. We've got dozens and dozens of new factory plant openings. We've got, huge construction employment in these numbers. And so we've got a supply side shock just related to the big, beautiful bill and the trade policy. And when that happens, it puts downward pressure on prices and upward pressure on growth. And that's what we're seeing. And so he's right. And I think a lot of people agree that there's plenty of room for the Fed to lower rates. And frankly, if you look at central banks around the world, they're looking at the same kind of things that I'm talking about. And so the Fed's rates now seem a little bit out of touch with the rest of the world.
Would you give us a pledge right here and take it down 150 basis points right here, right now? Why not say that's if I get the job, that's what I'm going to do?
Oh, well, I think obviously if I were there, that I'd have to negotiate with the rest of the committee members and see what kind of a consensus could be driven. But I think that if you do really careful economic analysis and think about the difference between supply and demand shocks, then you can see that there's lots of room for lower rates. And this is a huge mistake that Janet Yellen's Fed made in the past, where they said that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was going to be inflationary. You go back and look, we got 3% growth and 1% inflation after a big supply side shock, and I think that's what could happen again.
We were talking a bit earlier on the show, Kevin, about the Supreme Court case involving IEEPA. The Parrott obviously issued tariffs. I'm just curious as to how you're thinking about that. Should that not go the administration's way, given the importance it's had, as you've pointed out, in potentially reducing the deficit and obviously raising revenue?
Yeah, well, first of all, the deficit news has been really fantastic. And it's kind of funny because for the longest time, at least like the Democratic think tanks, they'd be telling you the only thing that matters is the deficit. Well, if you look at what's happened so far this year over year, by the calendar year, we're going to see a deficit reduction of about $600 billion. Multiply that by 10 and let there be a little growth. You're looking at 7 or 8 trillion in deficit reduction over the decade because of the policies we've adopted this year. About 1/3 spending cuts, 1/3 tariff revenue, and 1/3 Laffer curve-like growth from the tax cuts. And so with that big deficit reduction, then there's lots and lots of room for inflation to go down and so on. And so my view is that the deficit reduction is a key to the health of the economy, to lower rates. And if the Supreme Court were to do something about that, we've got backup plans, but it would be disruptive for a short while. Bottom line, though, is that we're highly confident that they won't do that, because in the end, there are two questions before them. One, is it an emergency? And how is it not an emergency if fentanyl's killing hundreds of thousands of people and if the trade deficit is making towns into ghost towns? And then the second thing is, does the language that says that we have the authority to regulate trade mean that we can use tariffs? But how else are you going to regulate trade if not with tariffs? Maybe you would say, oh, you would use quotas, but if you take quotas and auction them, then that's like a tariff. So it feels like the Supreme Court won't have anything to point to toss out the case. We're pretty confident that it's going to go the way we want. But if it doesn't, we have backup plans.
You do? Yeah, I mean, because there is a cogent argument that the other side has made in terms of some of the arguments your side has made that says, no, these are not emergency powers. So what are these backup plans? How much can we assume that you're going to be able to maintain the same rate, let's call it, of revenue coming in as a result of tariff-related things if, in fact, it's deemed illegal in terms of the powers that he's using right now?
Right. Well, there are things called 232s and things called 301s. And we have all these specific agreements with specific countries, which we could take those one by one without, like, if a country agrees to pay us a tariff, then that's not necessarily something that requires our IEPA authority to impose it. And so we've got deals, we've got 232s, we've got 301s. If we have to, we can put it all back together, but we don't think we're going to have to.
All right, so Kevin, we know that the president seemed to be uncomfortable with the way that he had to deal with Jay Powell, and Jay Powell being, listen, I'm very separate, I'm not taking the answers. I think the president's kind of a head coach, and if you got that job, you're a player. Now, if the head coach says, listen, you're going to have to go this way, and this way is to take rates down 200 basis points right now, are you going to tell him, no, coach, I'm not going to do that?
You know, the bottom line is that I talked to the president. When he says we could do this or we could do that, then he always has a reason. And you know that, Jim. You talk to him, too. And so the point is that if he's got a good reason, and if I were there and I found that I agreed with the reason, then I would present it to the others and see what they think. But the Federal Reserve's independence is really, really important, and the voices of the other people at the FOMC, they're important too. And so the way you've got to drive interest rate movements is with consensus based on the facts and the data. And I would say that's something that has been not really working so well for the Fed over the last few years. Like, you know, what are the facts? So when they made a mistake on this or that, then why did they make that mistake? What model got it wrong? That's the kind of stuff that becomes convincing over time because you actually have a track record of getting things right, and when you get things wrong, you explain why and fix it. And so that's the way it moves forward. But the president is a seasoned observer of the economy, and if he has a good point, then I'm sure others will recognize it as such.
We were just talking, Kevin, about onshoring and waiting for more progress on that front. Manufacturing jobs in November, that's 7 straight monthly declines. Do you expect that to reverse in 26?
Yeah, it's definitely what we're seeing is you saw the increase in construction. We've been tracking groundbreakings of all these factories that have come forward from both the trade deals, like the drug companies onshoring production for national security reasons. And we're up to around 30 groundbreakings in September, and all of those are going to create a lot of jobs moving into next year. So, I think that we're highly bullish on things going forward. And don't forget that the government shutdown is a time of heightened economic uncertainty where a lot of people just sort of hold off on hiring, hold off on this and that until they see that we're actually going to get the government up and running again. And so I think that the data that we're looking at now is partly colored by the government shutdown, and a bounce back from that is something that I think all observers should expect.
The Commerce Secretary's been on with us lately, suggesting maybe 6% GDP in 26. The president the other day in a meeting said, why can't there be 20% or 25% GDP growth? What is the street supposed to do with that kind of number?
You know, as an abstract thought, I don't know what the highest growth ever is, but I doubt it made it to 20%. The bottom line is that if you go bottom up and you say, what's productivity growth right now? I think because of AI, it's maybe 2.5% to 3%. What's capital stock growth right now? It's probably around 1%. What are we getting out of labor? It's probably around 0.5% to 1%. So you're looking at the sort of supply side of GDP going into next year, telling us that we need to have a number that's north of 4. And so that's about as far as I think that I'm willing to go.
You mentioned AI. Obviously, the economy is a beneficiary of all those data centers being built to power it. But there is this existential question, Kevin, that I'm sure you have to be thinking about, which is what is the impact going to be on employment? Even if we ultimately end up longer term with more jobs, there could be a very significant dislocation in the labor force. How do you think about the impact of AI when it comes to the introduction of efficiencies that ultimately seemingly will replace many human workers, at least over some period of time?
Right. Well, what we're seeing right now, right, is that the workers who are trained with AI have increased their productivity a lot, which gives us that productivity growth I was talking about. And they've also increased their wages a lot. You saw there was really a blockbuster wage growth in this employment report. And so that's a big positive. And the way I think about that happening is that every worker has like a really great AI coach standing next to them saying, hey, do it this way, do it that way, disregard the advice of Kramer. And then, wow, their productivity goes way up. But then over time, then there's a question of if I've got all these workers that are really productive, then maybe I don't have to hire a new guy because the guys who are here are already producing more than is demanded. But in equilibrium, what happens is GDP goes up, incomes go up, demand goes up, and we find positions for people who maybe move to a different factory or a different business that offers a different product. But that's that's the way it happens. Like electricity was positive for the economy, the internal combustion engine was positive for the economy, the computer was positive for the economy, and AI will be positive for the economy, and it won't cause disruption.
You don't think it'll cause any disruption shorter term, though? I guess that's the question. And again, we don't know the longer term, because when we have intelligence that exceeds our own, Kevin, I think all bets are off to a certain extent. But you're not concerned at all about even a short-term dislocation? I mean, the buggy whip manufacturers certainly had to find something else to do for a period of time.
Yeah, they had
probably
to find
were unemployed.
No, but think about it this way: the buggy whip guy had to find another job, and how did he do it? He maybe had a newspaper with want ads in the back, but now we've got a person who might have to find a new job who can search throughout the whole country on all these websites that tell you where the jobs are, and the number of job openings in the country is in the millions and millions. And so moving people from one job to another has never been easier and faster, and AI and the computer makes that even just more an efficient process.
Kevin, earlier you attributed a comment to me. I think that was what's called a hallucination. She's got it completely wrong. I know that we have I think we have an emergency versus the Chinese. I think the Chinese are starting to get ahead of us when it comes to AI. I think that we don't have enough people that are building data centers. We don't have people, we don't have enough power. Can we do something, an emergency power, to catch up and pass the Chinese? Not unlike what we had to do with Sputnik and Russia, because I think we're falling behind, and it's our responsibility to pull ahead.
Right. Well, I don't think we're falling behind, and we definitely have the president and his team has put together a plan to rapidly accelerate data centers, the power production that we need to power those data centers, to get rid of the sort of red tape that makes it so the permits won't let you build the power generation of the data center. And so if you look at a 3 or 4 year ahead plan, then you've never seen anything like it in the U.S. And so I think we're going to be totally fine. We've got the best chips, the best people, and a plan to deregulate so that we can get all the power that we need. I would say that if the Chinese have any advantage right now, it's that we inherited a situation where they really increased power generation capacity under the Biden administration, and we're catching up on that, but we're catching up fast.
Yeah, the Chinese can generate an awful lot of power, even if they are behind us in the overall technology. To come back to the overall number here this morning and sort of, where we started, Kevin, the total number of jobs in the U.S. increased by 0.6% over the last year, and that is the slowest growth rate since March of 2021. And to come back to it, I would like to get your response to that and what your expectations are in terms of 26.
Right. Well, again, if you look at the job creation that we had under Joe Biden, a lot of it, you might remember, was revised down. That it was, for the most part, an increase in government workers. And what we're doing is we're driving private sector job growth, and we've reduced quite dramatically the number of federal government workers. And so going forward, we've got the big, beautiful bill that was passed in July. That the last time we did it, it caused capital spending to go up more than 10% and give us growth more than 3%. If you add to that the AI productivity boom that we're seeing, then you can't be anything but like super optimistic about what's going to happen next year.
Kevin, story on our air yesterday. Hassett Fed chair candidacy received pushback from high-level people close to Trump, sources say. I don't think you commented on the piece, but I just want to offer you a chance now.
Oh. I think that's one of the great things about American democracy is that we move into jobs like that with a lot of discussion, a lot of inspection of the people, and that in the end is going to help everybody make a better choice. And so I'm glad when people speak up one way or the other.
All right, so Kevin, I'm the president. Could you give me the 30-second elevator pitch why you should get the job?
No, I'm not going to do that.
All right, that's fair
But
enough.
I'll give you the 30 second. I'll give you the 30 second. I'll give you the 30-second elevator pitch about why someone shouldn't be denied the job. And the idea that someone isn't qualified for the job because they are a close friend who's worked well with the president is something that I think the president rejects.
I like that. That's not bad.
No. You know, on Wall Street, there seems to be a feeling, and I don't want to make too much of it, that Kevin Warsh perhaps would be more of a favorite. Is there anything you want to sort of address to the Wall Street crowd, obviously, that we spend a lot of time with?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would just say that Kevin Warsh has a lot of experience. If he became the Fed chair would be in good hands. The president doesn't have a tough choice. He's got nothing but good choices.
Well, let's just kind of do a coda to Jay Powell a little earlier, but we can do it. I mean, I think that there has to be a consensus within the White House that Jay Powell, picked by the president, tried to do his best. I mean, can we at least give him that? Can we stop name calling? No more name calling Jay Powell. Worked hard, good job, wish him well. How about that? Kind of a high road, kind of like, you know, the Pulaski Skyway.
Yeah, I think it's time to move on. It's time to move on at the Fed. And, yeah, the president will announce his candidate soon.
No more. Good. Goodwill
is that close enough?
Goodwill toward him. Goodwill toward all. I like that. It's seasoned.
The other thing, Kevin, that we've been pointing out last couple of days, is usually in a conversation related to housing, is that since the Fed began cutting last September, unemployment's up, 30 basis points, CPI's up 60 basis points, 10-year yield up 50 basis points. Does that all make sense to you?
Yeah, I think that what's going on right now is that we've got this productivity boom that's coloring all the data. And so for me, the thing that made the least sense for me about what the Fed's been doing over the last few meetings is that we had a shutdown that slowed things down a little bit, and we had inflation numbers that were better than expected. And somehow those two data items made the Fed less likely to move. And I never really was convinced that that was sound thinking on their part. I'm glad they made the right decision this time, but I still wonder about what models they're using when something like that could be what comes out of their conversations.
All right. Are there contingency plans if, in fact, we get another shutdown at the end of January?
We always have to plan for everything. That's what we do, but we're sure confident that that won't happen again. The bottom line, though, is that Republicans voted not to shut down Joe Biden's government every single time. There was never a shutdown under Joe Biden. I've been working with President Trump since 2017, and I've already lived through 3 shutdowns. And so were we to have another shutdown, we don't expect it, we don't hope for it, we wouldn't be surprised. It seems to be one of the Democrats' key strategies to slow us down is to shut down the government. And hopefully they learned their lesson this time, because I think there was a lot of pushback for what they did.
Kevin, appreciate it. A lot of time today
Thank you,
covering a ton of data.
Thank you.
Jim?